one giant conversation keep unfolding.
Why do we feel that all of these things are what they are? These are continuous conversations, that we're connected, that this history is in our bodies. And the planet is the universe, according to men, human species, not men, human species, is 14 billion years old. We don't know what happened before the 14 billion. We don't know what happened after it. This human species has only been on the planet for 50 to 80,000, whatever the number is, but we have historical going back into the old, how we've evolved. Why do we feel that in this period of time there is so much connectivity, that so much is happening, and this is the center of all of, in many people's mind, this is the center. This is where it is. I don't understand why we have this grandiose vision or belief of this amazing cosmos, that everything is happening, and yet it's only happening, as far as we know, on a little rock in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, the way the universe is structured, the way we see it and the way it's structured from what we see, seems to be so weird.
Anybody else can chime in. You can. Just before we get, I want to continue this, Ilya. One of the suggestions that I make to all the audiences that I work with, or on, not that I'm working with you, that I'm here present with, is that I say to people, when you're in a small group, turn on your mic, so that you don't have to be awkward and do this type of motion, unless you're in a very noisy environment. We're used to being in restaurants and cafes and places where there's a lot of noise, and we're very comfortable with that as human beings. And the second is, if you don't have your screen on, you don't exist to us sitting here. Even in a group of 12 people, if there are 5 people moving and you're not moving, you don't exist. I don't look at Hannah. Hannah doesn't exist to me right now. Neither does Kaleb. Don't exist. If I see you, I will act. My mind will search out for Daria. I now know that there is a Vidit. I now know he exists, but otherwise in conversation. So if you want to be in a group, it seems that our minds are not used to certain types of activities, turning off and having an expression. Like, if I can't hear you, I don't know if you exist. I see your mouth moving, but it doesn't make sense. And we also don't do this in our lives. Have a conversation and go, but we're used to being at a coffee table and someone doing this and talking for a second, keeping it low so that the conversation can continue. So the challenge is, when it comes to the algorithm, and you might or might not know this, but if you have your mic off, you tend to move down a little bit in the algorithm. And if you have your mic and your video off, you're pushed down even further, depending on the size of the group. So the people who are not on and not mic'd are at the very end if there's 75 people, and they don't exist. So I'm glad I could see Hannah and the others joining. It's in something like this, it's an awkward position. We don't know how to have that conversation because you're here and you're not here. So getting back, does anybody else think, what do you think about the fact that we are a group, we are a species that very, very much elevates our own existence to a level that I think if any of the other species could talk, they'd say, well, we're here too. Like, a dog or an amoeba or the elephants are talking to each other. And yet, I wonder, do they actually say, yes, but the connectivity, it's so valuable that I can hear as a whale all the way around the world. That's an amazing thing, and we should explore that. Or do they just take it as it is and lead their lives?
Hey, Gina just joined. I mentioned Gina. He's a junior professor here at PolyU. Hi. Gina, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Gina, did you met David Goldsmith before?
No, maybe.
Oh, you should know each other. David Goldsmith, he is a founder of Moonhat Foundation, the one which is trying to improve conditions on Earth for all species. And
yeah, I think I've spoken to you before, David.
Yeah, I was going to pull up my database to see, because that's where I exist. Yeah, I think we've spoken before once.
Yeah, and what is happening is we summarizing the conference. Basically, what David is going to talk about is how we can innovate seriously. And knowing David, there's going to be a lot of him, but then it's going to be a conversation. And I want to give it time so that we can engage all of us into that and really walk away from this conversation with new understanding of knowledge. One of the key ideas David taught me 3 years, I think, ago, 2.5, right? Yeah, was about this concept of thinking outside of the box. It's a very popular idea that you need to think outside of the box. And then when you actually try to apply this metaphor and understand what it means, and you ask people how they actually do thinking, people who are doing serious thinking, they never do this. They never put themselves outside of the box. They bring stuff inside their box, enrich their box, reach out in the world for things, but then they bring it back in the context of where they at, because this is how you do new innovative thinking.
So unless you're in a noisy room, why don't you turn on your mic? Let's try that. It'll make you uncomfortable for some of you, but turn on your mic. Unless you're in a noisy room.
I want to jump in on that point, mainly because I'm also just waking up too. I don't know.
There's an understanding of that type of scenario. I mean, I had 3.5 hours or 3 hours sleep.
Yeah, I was just saying. I was going to say it's interesting. I don't know that everyone doesn't go outside of their box, but I do agree that it's very difficult for most folks to come outside of their box. That we end up pulling into our frame of reference more often than we're able to live outside of it.
Let me explain the construct, and we can talk about it for a moment. It's not complicated, yet there's some nuances to it. I have never liked, this is me, I have never liked the expression think outside the box. I've disliked being in meetings where people would say, let's everybody think outside the box. And one day, I don't remember where I was, I asked myself, I was living in Hong Kong, but I don't know where I was. I said, David, do you ever think outside the box? I ask myself that because in almost everything I do, I always ask myself if it works for me. If it doesn't work for me, then it's not a ubiquitous. It has to work for me. And then I can go outside and explore what that definition means, or what that construct that I've built means. And I said to myself, I never do. And I said, then what do you do, David? Now, I didn't say this, I'm saying it here out loud, but I said it to myself, so you're hearing the same dialogue. I said, you have patents in cell phone technology, battery technology, artificial intelligence. You've worked in 300 different industries. You've taught at NYU, and the list is on and on. Why don't you think outside the box? And the expression that came back to me is because you can't. You think inside the box. And then I said, okay, what does that mean? And it says, well, David, what you do is you have something in front of you, a challenge in front of you. I don't like the word problem, because problems are negative and you can't solve. No one wants a problem, but you want a challenge or an opportunity. So I use the word challenge. So you have a challenge in front of you. What do you do? And I say, what I do is I create a construct, a box, a space. So I'm not thinking outside of my box. I'm thinking outside of, I made this triangular thing, and I start to pull from my experiences and said, what do I do? And I put it in, and I put it in, and I use this box that I'm in as my tools, and look at it, not a good idea, and I push it to the side. And then I make a parallelogram, and I start to evaluate and move, and I say, I got some good things, and I put it here. And then I get to another one, and I say, I know some of this, but let me search for something. I need some new answers, and I pull them in, and then I work on them, and then I might call a friend and say, what do you think? And, that's good. And I put, hey, those two put together. And then I realized that the way in which I was doing it was or the reason that I was fast, and I'm one of the reasons I'm hired, or one of the things that I do, or one of the reasons I answer the questions I do, even in freeform, is because I've enriched this space in which I live in. And what does that mean? It means that I've traveled and worked. Difference between the two. I've worked in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Singapore, Malaysia. I've worked in Latvia, Estonia. I've worked in Moscow and Copenhagen. And I've worked in places, and I've lived and experienced. And I do my own carpet, plumbing, and electrical work. And I draw, paint, and sculpt. And so when I want something, I don't have to search for it. I don't have to go out and say, where is the answer? The answer is already here. And so when we're in a meeting and you see people have no answers, they're struggling. It's because their box is not full. Their head is not full. But when you have all these experiences, you can pull from them. So I wondered if this was a neat something that was valuable. And I was in Silicon Valley having dinner with a friend. At the time, he was 80, about 6 years old. This guy is brilliant, beyond imagination, speaks multiple languages. He knew Steve Jobs. He's been involved in some of the most amazing projects. He has 4 Lear jets. And we're having dinner with he and his girlfriend. And I share with him that we don't think outside the box. When you tell somebody to think outside the box, you're telling them to do something that they don't know, that they can't know. And what you're doing is you're sparking them to go fill their box so that you can have a conversation and solve something. And he said to me, I don't like it. And he stood up and he went to the toilet in some language, bathroom in others. And he knows everybody in Silicon Valley and Palo Alto, and it takes him 20 minutes to come back. And the woman, his girlfriend, says, not a good idea. He doesn't like that. And he comes back 20 minutes later and he says, that's exactly what I do. And I was surprised. Well, tell me. He says, I fill my head all the time, every day, with new things and experiences, and I challenge myself. So when something comes up, I immediately can react to it. I don't have to look outside or think outside the box because I've already made this amazingly large box. I said, okay. And we spoke. And then I left and I came back to Hong Kong and I had a meeting with Edge from KPMG, who's head of innovation. And we're sitting in, I can't remember the name of the restaurant, the coffee shop in one of the places we were at. And I share with him the exact same thing. And he says to me, that's exactly what I do. I've never heard it that way, but that's how I live my life. And so the expression that I gave to Ilya is this thinking outside the box is not something we do. What we do is if you live life, if you experience life, if you gather experiences, if you're engaged in all sorts of different types of activities, you play guitar, you draw, you have conversations, you attend events, all of these pieces of data, these experiences, create the ability to be innovative and to think. And so you're actually thinking inside the box, and you're connecting those pieces. So that was the storyline behind that. So what do you think? Do you think outside or do you think inside?
Gino,
how would you relate this to? How would you relate this to? So I do research in consciousness and phenomenology and neurophysiology. And so, and I look at kind of personal development from birth through kind of awakening and beyond. And so, usually, when you're born, arguably, and again, very quickly, if you look at physiology as hardware and phenomenology as software, metaphorically speaking, there's the body, and then there's this symbolic consciousness and this mental worldview that we're all in right now. Arguably, this conversation is happening kind of in this mental space. And arguably, when you're born, this doesn't exist, and our experiences in space and time bind symbols and thought to processes in physiology. And so as we experience the world, we start building our mental worldview. And this mental worldview that we live in and we feel comfortable in, arguably is the box, is our conceptual understanding of our framing of what reality is. And arguably that's the box. And the challenge of how do you get outside of the box is the problem of Zen and all of this other stuff, is how do you get someone out of their mentally constructed worldview when the totality of the way that they're processing the moment and the way they live their lives is from constructing this mental worldview that is this box. And arguably, well, the only thing you can do is really kind of make your box bigger, unless we explore concepts like intuition or insight or somehow other forms of knowing that go beyond kind of the traditional kind of experience, build a mental worldview, et cetera. And so David, as an example, I remember seeing you, I remember your background, and then just looking on Facebook, I realized that, hey, yes, we were, introduced before I was on my way to Egypt. And then I think we were in a conversation. I'm trying to think, I think it was maybe like Peter Hirschberg or someone, we were in a conversation online, and then we were able to connect, and then I think we're going to connect later on or something like this as well too. But all of that are memories that come from, part of my box getting bigger and bigger based upon my lived experience. And so the interesting, exciting thing that happens, especially with collectives like this, and we have James here, which is wonderful. James does Brains on the Beach, where you get people not in kind of a box problem thinking situation, but you get them in a beach or something like that, and you get them kind of open. And when you get different boxes coming together, with these different perspectives, then there are going to be areas that are outside of your box, that are outside of the collective boxes, with the energy that you smash together. And so when you get people in an open, vulnerable way, fully present and engaged, and you have them bring all of their understanding, you've got all of these boxes colliding together, and the areas, and because of that collision, it's almost like taking particles and kind of smashing them together, you get into a higher energy state with the collective energy, and then that gives you enough energy to like leave the box that you're in and look at other possibilities for that brief moment that you're all collected together and co-inspiring each other.
What you just you just described exactly, without realizing it potentially, you demonstrated exactly what I was saying, is that you had a new experience. And that experience is meeting these individuals. And when you met those individuals, and whether it be trust or forced or whatever situation it is, you saw and experienced new awareness, and that awareness became part of your box. So therefore, you will have that now, because you have some ownership in it. You've seen it. I can't have you do something you've never seen or done or experienced before. You can't. It's an impossibility. So the reason that I came up with this kind of tool mechanism is because it's a frustrating expression. And I will share with you, at NYU, I had one of these triggers that I still remember. One of the students in the class shared with us that the owner of the business, fairly large business, was always late on everything. And they always would have this conference they had to go to, and then they had to bring samples and the New Year's line. And he would always sit them down very late in the game and say, you have any new ideas? And there weren't many new ideas because they all knew each other. They had already given their new ideas. So he'd say, okay, now everybody has to go to a store, look and see what's out there, and then come back. And what he was really saying is, in order for you to think outside the box, we need you to go get new experiences and come back with those experiences to our box. So it's a very challenging word to just say, think outside the box. So you have triggers and memories and connections. And in the same light, if you give someone a tool they can't use or they can't get to or how to, I have to have a Zen master to do this. When I say to someone, the more experiences you have, the more things you learn, the more capable you are of interacting and meeting and sharing and doing, so that you can get a richer life. You can achieve some of the desired outcomes you want. That's something that's positive and can be achieved. And I'll give you a present day one. Yesterday, I was on the phone. It was yesterday. My timing is a little off. You're the day before my day, which one it is. I spoke to a woman I met at this event called Herosis. We only met for 5 minutes, and we got on the phone and started talking. And very quickly, trust was built. However that was done, she liked me, I liked her. I said the right words. We started to explore the world. They had an office in Hong Kong. We talked about Hong Kong and how I lived in, and I used to live in TST and then Yamate and then Mongkok and then Shenyang. And we talked about the challenges that are happening there. And then we went to we traveled the world together. We traveled the world together because she had experiences and I had experiences. And my box became larger from the lessons I learned from her. So it became a mechanism that's a lot simpler for individuals to get their minds around. And that's why I think it's a valuable tool. And I think one is deconstructive, one is demotivating. You don't have it. And the other one is gather your experiences, because if you really want to innovate, you just have to pull from what's inside your box. Anybody else?
So I want to play with a metaphor, because I mean, when I'm talking to you, David, you're in a box because we're in Zoom. So you're in a box. And you've also got an angular space behind you. You're in a box. The question is never. I think the question you always need to ask people, and we do a similar thing, which I'll talk afterwards, is how big is the box? What shape is it? What color is it? What's in it? There's all kind. The assumption of what a box looks like is the problem. The box could be beautiful. It could be full of glitter and tinsel and wonderful, or as I've just put in the quote, it could be full of made of ticky-tacky, all looking just like the same as everybody else's, which is a wonderful song that sort of has been playing around with this many, many years ago. So one of the things that we do when we play a little bit on something different. When the phrase "What would Jesus do?" One of the phrases we use is "What would Kanye do?" as in Kanye West. So when people are getting to the point of, okay, we can't think any further, well, what would Kanye do? Which allows a little bit more craziness and then to push into the corners of the box that they didn't know existed. So that's playing with the metaphor a bit. It's about what it is rather than just thinking of it as a little Zoom room that we can't get out of.
So maybe I can help you. Just again, you very perfect. You shared. You were able to very quickly change somebody's thinking. It was brilliant what you said, Richard. You were able to, one, about the room and that it's beautiful because we're in rooms and boxes and boxes. The second is that you use the trigger of innovation. And that's what I had written about years and years and years ago, was that what we need as humans to expand our knowledge or do something is we need tools to enable us to think a little bit differently. So if you said, think like Kanye West, then if I said to you, because we know Kanye West, that's in our box, we understand Kanye. But if you don't know Kanye, you could not do that exercise. So you need the experience of Kanye. If I said, think like Leonardo da Vinci or Einstein, and I didn't say just think like them, I said, why don't you imagine who they are and now act like them? I want you in this meeting to be Leonardo da Vinci and you be Einstein and you be Kanye West. That's an amazing different set of experiences.
Yeah, that's actually where we go. We use Kanye to start with because he's got the album Jesus. So what did Jesus do? What would Kanye do? And then it's like, well, imagine the person that you personally think push the boundaries and be that person. And then what would that person? So you take them into exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And you have that box, which is, it's where another disconnect happens. That exact same disconnect happens in many meetings around the world where someone will say, think of a customer. Walk in the customer's shoes. Be like, how do you do that? Like, how do you walk in a customer's shoes? So I always say, let's do a comparison. One is I want you to use that, think like the customer or be the customer. And then I say, why don't we do something different? And I'm going to use not a customer, but like you have someone in your office that you're having challenges with. And now I want you to think of that person and I want you to think of their home. I want you to think of their age. I want you to think, do they have family who's sick? I want you to think, do they have children in university or in elementary school? I want you to think about the demands that they have, the responsibilities that they have. I want you to think about what other employees are pulling on them, what their body is like. Is it breaking down? Are they sick? Do you know it? Do you not? Do they not sleep at night? I want you to think about all the things about this individual. And now I want you to be the person. I want you to fall into their shoes. I want you to take over their body, behind their desk, walking around the office, sitting next to you, and all their challenges. Now, tell me what you think. And it's another experience. It's a whole new experience. So if you think of horse racing, there's an expression, and the horse wins by a nose. Someone loses by a nose. Often races and experiences and connections, or whatever you're challenged to achieve in your lifetime, are lost or won by a fraction. The races that everyone in this room are up against are typically not won by kilometers. They're won by fractions. So if you now know what your boss, your friend, your relative is experiencing, if you know what your customer is truly going through, not the one that walk in their shoes, but you are in their shoes, you have a better job of becoming better, of being a better you. And these are, again, triggers for thinking inside the box to bring us to that elevated state. And it's a tool. And so that's where Ilya was talking about is we have so many different mechanisms out there that confuse or are challenging to achieve. I'm not going to be a Zen Buddhist, not to pick on Gino, and I'm not going to be a monk, and I'm never going to be a ninth dan in Taekwondo. There's only one in the world, and I'm never going to be one of the best racers in the world, and I'm not saying that to be, that's not my desired outcome. But what if I could be a better me? And in doing so, I always start with me, and I try to use those experiences to make them. And for me, give me a tool. Don't give me a chart with 4,000 different diagrams on it. Give me a tool that I can use. And so I think saying to somebody, think inside the box. What do you know? Who do you experience? Who can you talk to? What are your connections? Makes it more humanistic and makes it more transferable. What do you think, Hannah?
I'm inspired by the conversation, even though I'm a bit intimidated because I honestly have never taken part in any of these events where you just have this exchange of thoughts. But I like the idea, even though I was struggling a bit with, in a way, you have these different boxes and you're in your box and you try to expand it and you try to enrich it. And at the same time, you can never really have a box that includes everything and everyone and all the experiences, right? So in the end, is the goal just to expand and try to improve it with the knowledge that it can never really be a box that can understand everybody?
So good question. How would you use or apply the word think outside the box prior to hearing what we spoke about?
I would have thought of it in a way that by thinking outside of the box, I would have thought, and now I think about it a bit differently, but by thinking outside of it, you expand it, you go beyond it. So you expand your position no matter if you're inside or outside of the box. So for me, that distinction is a bit confusing, but maybe that's just my idea of it.
No, it's a new thought. So you're not wrong. You're just, there's an evolution to it. If you come from the place of where I was coming from, I wasn't coming to solve something. I was coming to understand something. And for me, I would say a lot of my life is based out of frustration. I don't like what someone has said, and I want to understand it. I get challenged in a sport or learning a new skill because I just want to be better at it for me. And from that, I said, how do I help myself? Because I don't understand this thing, think outside the box. I can't do it. I don't know how I'm sitting here and someone walks up and says, David, think outside the box. What do you want me to do? I mean, I don't know where I go. I don't know how to do that. But if you said to me, David, could you give a presentation to a group of people in Hong Kong over Zoom, and you have to express something? I say, okay, how would I do that? So I think inside my box. Who have I seen done something? How did they do it? What would be a way that I can incorporate it in? And now I could be innovative in being me. And that's it. That's as simple as it is. I didn't sit down and say, ooh, I'm going to do this presentation or this whatever. I said, I've been to Ilya's events, so I know him. He likes to be very metaphysical, connected, energy-wise. He loves that. That's his style. It's not my style, but I can fit into it. So I know that. So that's in my box. I know Ilya. And then I met, he had me on all 3 meetings, I think he had. And then I got to know people. Okay. And then I experienced yesterday. Okay. So it's not going to be as formal. Some people did formal, some not. And all I'm doing is saying, how do I solve the challenges of me? And that's as simple as it is. It's not about what other people think. It's how do I have my life, make my life not easier is a word. How do I make my life richer? How do I find my experiences to be stronger? And that's the extent of it. There's nothing left. I mean, that's it. So you just had an experience, Hannah. You came online. You were not visible. You had an experience. How was that? You had another experience. You had to share about this activity of thinking. How do you feel?
I mean, an honest answer is I feel inspired in a way, and I feel like I can look at how I approach new topics and new people differently in this framework, even though, and maybe that's a bit from my background, coming from gender studies and psychology. I'm always thinking about who can I help in a way, how can I connect with people further, and how I understood it now that you said this thinking inside of the box is mainly to help myself, to evolve myself in some way. And what I'm thinking is that is very helpful, and I understand that way of looking at it, and still I think it's, in a way, maybe I haven't grasped it yet, but a bit egoistic to think about it like that, to think, okay, this is just, and maybe this is too harsh, I don't know, I don't want to, I'm just not in the topic too long. So, but to think inside of your own box and to think, okay, how can I enrich my own experience, my own life by just adding all these things? It's still this image of being inside of your box is quite, I don't know, maybe the visual just of being inside your small box that extends gradually, hopefully.
So maybe I can help you with that if I can for a second. I don't think of a box. That's what I started with. I never think of a box. But if I have to use this frame, think outside the box, it didn't work for me. I don't understand what that means. Yet in the past 4 minutes, you expanded my box. You shared with me that you were uncomfortable. You shared with me that you do gender studies. You shared with me that you had challenges with the construct because of maybe the way I said it. So my box, if you want to use it, or my experiences now enable me to meet the next person or to use that. So if I sat down with you for coffee, I now know that you do gender studies. And I have I do a program what women need to know about men that men don't know about themselves. I've done it around the world. I did it in Hong Kong, and it's not my life. It's not what I do for a living. Yet when I'm done, I'll have 50 men and women in the audience. When I'm done, I always look to the men and I say, so what do you think? And the guys always say, spot on, exactly. And the women are, really? Really? And that, why, by you just saying gender studies, you blew a whole section of what I know into our conversation and our dialogue for me to be able to connect with you or disconnect from you, whatever I like. So it's just a means. It's not that there is a box. It's your experiences. You can carry them with you. And that's all it is. It's not bigger than that. We're not solving the beginnings of where the universe sits. That's another conversation. Does that help a little?
Yeah, it makes more sense if because it was a bit confusing, maybe also because there's constructions here all the time, so I don't hear everything perfectly. And I might have just missed the part where you're like, okay, let's just disregard that box and just like try to, think outside of it without even having a box. So that makes more sense, and I can identify a bit more with like trying not to have this visual of a box. So yeah.
It never crosses my mind to have a box. I never think about that, ever. I just know that if I enrich my life, I can address challenges that I face, again, problems or opportunities. I can address them in ways where I don't have to, oh, this is challenging, I don't know this. And I can address it. I have tools inside of me. And I love that. It's exciting. I'm not in the room saying, I can't talk, I can't help, I can't participate. I'm not in a situation where something's gone wrong and I don't have something to be able to solve that. And then the people around, oh, how did you know that? Well, I have 2 chainsaws. I have all gear for climbing up 10 meters into I have all the tools in the world in my workshop. I can solve this. But if you've never used the chainsaw, if you've never used a compound miter box, if you've never used a cordless, powered cordless drill, you can't. You'd have to expand your knowledge base, and then you can, and that's it.
I think it's not only about knowledge. I just was listening to that. I realized I had this experience recently when I started coming back into time. I just arrived to Hong Kong. When I arrived to Hong Kong, I had to build a startup. And I rise to the challenge, and my English was horrible at the time. I was speaking every week. First time in Hong Kong ever, never been in a city before, trying to create a startup in this new for me culture, new environment. And I rise to many challenges, but there are a few things I was completely failing to do. I was just unable to do them, just unable. And they were absolutely crucial for what I was trying to do. So eventually the startup failed. And I kind of placed people who work for me to work. And in many instances, when I was going through that, there was like feedback I was getting from people that, hey, you have everything. Your design is brilliant. Your idea is really good. And people were saying stuff like, if only you were in the United States, you will raise capital easily, right? But you're in Hong Kong, so that's why. Or they were finding some reasons. And recently I went through this experience of my own, trying to understand myself a bit better. And I end up realizing that I was stopping myself. There was no problem with money, no problem with it. Like, it was not, Hong Kong was not a problem whatsoever. It was me in specific points of my life. And that was connected to my box, as I said. But there was not only good, positive experiences in my box. There was also childhood trauma and failures and things which end up activating as much as my positive experiences and completely blocking me, like numbing myself to, like, it was me doing that, right? I was experiencing life, trying to rise my energy level, right? Trying to go and build this thing, like the most important thing in my life, build a startup in fucking Hong Kong, right? So I was like, Urgh! And what I was facing is that all this energy was coming back on me with the force saying, no, you're not going to do this. On this specific aspects of your life, you're actually not alive, you're dead. And it's numb, and you should not exist. All of these things. And when I start really looking at that, I come all the way back. And I shared with you a bit, David. At some point, I also, last 5 years, I had chronic pains in my back, right? In my lower back. So my hips were very kind of fixed. I was not able to move.
You're married.
Yeah, for 20 years.
That's the pain in the back. I'm joking.
More. So mean.
No, that would be the neck. That would be the neck.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Gino should know.
And again, I'm asking myself, what did I miss? Because I thought I said experiences are part of that box. All of those things we bring with us. And I'm asking, did I not say it, or did I not say it the right way that you heard me, which is another question. These are things, these are our tools. These are our means of coping. These are our means of being innovative. These are our means of connecting. And we don't, if I imagine this as a scenario and you are sitting across from somebody and this person has pain, and I'll make it an abusive scenario where something has completely gone wrong in their life, someone's been abusing them, and you're sitting across from them and you do not share that you understand and have pain, will you connect? But if you have this tool and you say, I have learned, I have seen, I have witnessed, I understand, that sharing some of myself opens the door for conversation. And you say, when I was 7 years old, my father did this to my mother. Or I lived in this country and I saw abuse of this type. That individual and you can now connect. It's a means of, if you don't, you won't get there. And so that is to me thinking inside the box, is that I'm taking something that I know or a friend that I have or an experience that I have, and I'm bringing it to the table for whatever scenario it is. Ilya knows I do podcasts, and I've done 250, only about 50 of them are live right now. But when I do a podcast, I take notes. I've never seen a podcaster take notes. Each one is an interview. This could be 17 pages long. But for me, taking notes makes me present. Taking notes helps me outline. Taking notes gets me engaged. I'm expanding my box with brilliant people. That's all I'm doing. I get to call an amazing person. I got to call Jerry Glenn, who owns the Millennium Project, and I got to speak with him, and Megan Crawford from Space Fund, and Andrew McCarthy, who's a photographer who takes unbelievable photos. He has 350,000 people following him. And Hank Rogers owns Tetris. And Stephanie Countryman is in life sciences, and she taught me how they work on the International Space Station. And Lorraine Smith is an impact, and she helps companies to understand impact. And Alex Leyendecker, amazing, the longest interview I've ever done, 4.5 hours. He's a helicopter pilot who studied sexuality and reproduction. And he's got his PhD in it, but he does off Earth. That's what he studies, what it would be like in space. And he started in a place I never would have started. He said, wherever we go in the universe, our sexuality will come with us. And we explored how wherever you came from in the world, whatever culture, society you are, you bring that with you into space, into this new world. So unfortunately, America is like number 19 in the world in terms of sexuality and connection. But the Icelandics or the Greeks, the Greeks, and I won't give the numbers now, but the Greeks and the Icelandic, sexuality in Icelandic is, if I meet a woman and I like her and she likes me, she might take me home. Why? And it's acceptable. Why? Because she says, why do I want to waste time with you if we're not sexually compatible? So you'd bring it home, you'd enjoy yourself, you'd see if there's a connection there, and you're done. And it's even funny because one person was sharing me that the father always takes the men she brings home, shoes, and brings them to the breakfast table and puts them under the chair. So when the guy's looking to leave in the morning, he has to go sit next to the father. And the father's not reaming him out. The father just wants to know, is he compatible too? And they have a conversation. And that's Icelandic culture. And we bring with us. And that's what I learned from these people, so that, again, Hannah, I now have something else to talk about. I have now something to share, an experience that I can pull upon when I'm designing new products or I'm traveling. And it enables connection or innovation or a richer life. What is the meaning of all of this? I mean, really, what is the meaning of everything we're doing? And I think we as humans take ourselves in such a grandiose, highfalutin way that the fact that we can think about all of these esoteric or energy, that we are more than we are. We are a being on this little rock in the middle of nowhere, upon billions and billions and billions of galaxies. And within all the galaxies, there are billions and billions of suns. And around those suns are billions and billions of planets. And the number is so large that we can't fathom it. And yet we sit on this planet and have these conversations as if we're solving the answer. What answer? What is the end? I mean, it sounds like often we're searching for something. We're searching for the answer. So let me ask you, do you read other people who've searched for the answer? Do you read their books? Do they have the answer? Do you read of the great minds and what they have thought about? Did they find the answer? In reality, you could go back and back and back. There's nobody who's found the answer. And we quote them as if they're famous and they're knowledgeable, but they lived a life of desperation searching. And many of them might have felt they came to a point. But if I was to show up and say, hey guys, I have the answer. Here's the answer. It's right here. You want it? Take it. You wouldn't want the answer. You really don't want the answer, because the answer is the end. It's the end of your journey. And you're not going to accept my answer. I can guarantee you, no matter what I say, there's somebody who's not going to accept my answer. You might like it and bring it into your construct, but it's not the answer. Oh my, how could you? Because if you had the answer, you're done. So we search to search because we love the search, but we don't really want an answer. We like to believe we'll find one. But in the reality of time and space in 14 billion years, odds are that you will never find this answer. And yet we love to talk about, we found energy and spirituality in this and that and that. What is it for? I would argue that we do it to find ourselves so that we can have the experiences of our lives. I don't know anybody who's come back from the dead, not from like 3 minutes of being dead, but someone who's been dead like for 6 years. I don't know anybody who's come back and said, you guys were right, we found the answer. There's nobody who's come back and told us we have the answer. There's not a single person who could say they have the answer in all the billions of people who've lived. And yet, we search as if we're going to find the answer. No, we're not searching for the answer because we don't want it. We want the question and the journey of the question to enrich our lives, to meet people, to talk to Kristopher and find out why he chose the museum behind him, or where he was in the psych ward, and that's just, a few things they put up, and that's the white walls in the white room is where they go. Or Kaleb puts up his imagery, and he puts that up, and it's very sci-fi, and it's techno, and it's expressing who he is, and that's the journey. But we don't want an answer. We want the journey. And maybe it's all about just where are we going and what is that meaning? I think we're making more of who we are than we are. And that causes us to do things that maybe if we just slowed down and realized we're just doing it for us, then we might find more peace in the journey we're on.
I just want to say you became very Buddhist there at the end. This is the sculpture gallery at the Smithsonian in DC.
Okay.
So I chose it, just to answer your question, I chose it because I was looking for a background, not today, but at another point, and I was like, oh, that's acceptable. It was one of the first ones that came up that I thought, okay, that can work. So something you're saying, which is interesting, is to me is this idea of well, thinking in general, but I do practice Buddhism quite a bit and meditation, and one of the things that I think is quite interesting about that is the idea, the difference between like thoughts and insights, and so looking at, thought being something. Your brain is always thinking, whether you're aware of it or not. It's just constantly thinking, and a lot of people think that they practice meditation of some sort, thinking that they're trying to stop that from happening, which you're not. You're actually just trying to be aware of that. You're trying to observe what's actually occurring there, because most of when we think, it's just there, part of the noise. So then there's a concept of insight, which is something where, sometimes you pose so one of the mental exercises I've have come up with is sometimes you ask a question and you think to try to find the answer, and other times but when you have a clear mind, you can ask a question, and the answer just appears out of kind of thin air. And that kind of comes around for me to think about silence. So when you're talking about filling your box with things, my question is, the thought that kind of came to my mind is where does space, where is there space for insight, or where does that come in with that? With what you're talking about.
That's a great question, because Ilya might have heard us speaking about it last night. One of the illusions, and I don't know how it comes about, is that, and I start with myself first. I start with myself first because it helps me to be able to express it, and then I can express it to others. That's the way I do everything. I wrote a small book, and I always start, if it doesn't work for me, it can't work for other people. I can't tell others. So I am not who you might think I am. So I spend a tremendous amount, I'm an introvert. I spent a tremendous amount of time alone. I have no challenge. My last nights, I watched Hong Kong and Godzilla, and the new movie that came out, and it's in Hong Kong, and I felt I was almost in tears at times, just because of missing the home that I've had. And I do my own carpeting, plumbing, electrical work, and I can disappear for 8 hours and not think. And talking about those activities that you have, there's a tremendous amount of silence. And one of those, and I'm not one who wants to say that I meditate, because I don't like that terminology. I think it's a separation term. Every morning, I'll say not every, but every day, I try to go into a state of whatever we call this. It's not meditation because it came from a different place. And Ross and I were speaking last night, and he was sharing about meditation and what that meant. And I said, let me share with you where mine came from, and maybe this will be useful. And he's about body. If you know Ross is very about the body and what it means. And I said, my father came home when I was about 12. He had just gone to a course on hypnosis, and he's a dentist, and he wanted to use the hypnosis to be able to use it in his practice. So he lines the three of us up, my two sisters and myself. I'm the oldest. And he asks them things, and he gives them a lemon, and but I took the lemon, put it in my mouth, no issue. He then gave me a weight and had me hold it out, and I held it out. He had me see something on the wall, and I could see a clock. And then he ran into the office without me knowing, house office connection. He came and he brought a needle and he put it through my hand, and I didn't feel it. I can go to what's considered a 7 out of 8 in terms of hypnosis. Wherever I go in the world, if there's a hypnotist and they're doing an audience, there could be 500 people and they're looking for somebody, they always point at me, always. It's like I'm a glue, I'm magnetized to them. They see me, and something about me lets them know that I'm willing to be open And that's what hypnosis is about, is are you willing to be open, to hear, to be engaged? And my father did this about 3 times, and he didn't do it again because he was afraid of the legal liability. But he gave me a cue word that I still use to this day. And I said, well, if my father could teach me this, why don't I take a portion of my brain and do this to myself? And I have trained myself so that I wake, or when I do it, I take my body and I can completely numb everything. I mean, I can't feel the blanket on me. I can't feel my hands. From my neck down, there is nothing. And I can calm my head to a point where I've had procedures done on me. My father would say, I haven't given you anything, and people would be through the roof, and you are not even reacting. I did a procedure a doctor, the whole team, had never seen happen. Not because I spent an hour and a half before I went into the procedure. I spent an hour and a half bringing my body to the state. And a woman sat that far from my face watching me, and she said, do you know the entire time you did not wrinkle your brow once? And I opened my eye at one point, scared her to death, because how am I awake? And I looked at the screen, I watched what was going on, and then I went back under because I saw something I didn't like. And so when I get into this state, what I am doing is, and I share this with Ross, is in all my day, when does my body completely disassociate with itself? Where my body is at a point where I can't lift my arms. There's no muscle tone. There's no feeling. Is there a value for these few moments, is 20 minutes in that time? Sometimes it goes 30 or 40, I'll let it go, where my body is just at peace with itself. It's not arguing with itself as far as I know. Is that a value? And he talked about how you go search for a journey and write down notes. I said, I really just am when I do that. And maybe I'm not searching for an answer. I never go in saying, I want to find the answer to this challenge I have. I think that if I can do this to myself, when I come out, I am more acceptable to finding that answer. I am more at ease with myself. My body has had time to rest. I'm not putting it on a journey every time I get into meditative state to find and record my journey and then wake up and make sure I take my notes. I found the answer. I believe that those 20 minutes allow me to be. And then from there, I can be for the rest of the day in a different state. And so to get to these journeys and these discussions, I have said to Buddhists, or why? Did someone else tell you that's the answer? Like you, and I'm picking on you, Kristopher. I just finished this book, which I think is brilliant, Buddhism and Simple. And theirs is about his analogy, or they say Buddhism is about seeing. So I made this up in my little shop, and it says see. And then there's a V5, because I'm a 5th version of myself. Yeah, I'm kind of weird in these ways. And then these little symbols that are all over it are to be positive. And that helps me to be. And it's a reminder, it's in front of me. See you, see me. Be who you are as this version of yourself. And to make sure that you're not overly positive. I hate that. Everybody wants positivity. You gotta be positive. No, I go to negative oftentimes to find answers. And so I challenge with how much of what we're being taught is just because we were taught it, instead of this disassociation of just being.
David, when we met, was you on a version 4 or you were already on version 5?
I've had 4 experiences in my life. I was on 4 where I would go up and then I'd crash. And then I'd go up and then I'd crash. And then I'd go up and I'd crash. But each time they get higher and higher. Unfortunately, when you go up higher, you hit harder. And so, but there's one thing about me that I can't explain. I don't know why. I don't learn and learn and learn and learn and learn and learn and grow. I learn and have the same fucking experience over and over and over again, like knives in my back or whatever. And then I get to a day And I can almost tell you the days that I wake up the next morning and I'm different. I just wake up the next morning. I know I'm different.
So version 5, when this happened? Version 5, when it's happened?
When the night of May 1st and May 2nd of 1999.
1999.
No, sorry, 2019. And it was in Hong Kong. And I was looking for an answer. And there's a guy in Hong Kong who I had met a short story to it. I met a guy a year earlier at an event. I'm at an event, I meet this guy, and I had met him a year earlier. And he says, why didn't you call me? And I said, I texted you and you never responded. And he said, no, I always respond to everybody. And he disappears for a minute, comes back. And he says, yeah, you did. And I said, he said, we should meet tomorrow. This guy's amazing. He can walk into a conference and walk away with 100 business cards or 50 business cards. His skill is the ability to shake someone's hand, know who they are, I don't know how, and then say, you need to meet Hannah. You need to meet Henny. And he'd just walk you right over within less than a minute and a half, and that would be the right connection. So maybe he sees auras. I don't know. I've spoken to him about it.
Does this all the time, by the way.
He just knows.
Yes, Gino, I think it's all that Gino does.
Okay.
Like he does this thing when he meets you, he takes a selfie with you immediately, then send it to a group chat, introducing you to somebody, and you need to meet this person. And he just does like hundreds of this per day, I think.
So this one guy has this ability, like Gino, and we say, I say to him, he says, let's have lunch tomorrow. So I schedule, sure, we'll have lunch. We have it over at near Sogo. And while we're sitting there, he asks me some questions. And I'm asked, and I said, he said, I want to tell you something about you. Okay. He says, I can't see in you. I've met hundreds of thousands of people in my life. I cannot see in you. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I can meet someone and tell them where they go. I can't see inside of you. You are so different than anybody. There's only been 2 or 3 people in the world I've met that you bring something that I don't understand. And he said, and we talked about changing and evolution, and something was said, that trigger, that brought me home to who I was. And I found the key. I found it. I remember finding it, saying, oh, and it was this. Many people who I've experienced in my life say you feel with your head and your heart and your head and your head and your heart, and you got to connect your head and your heart. And I've always said, just like the box, I said, do I feel that way? And I would tell people, I don't feel that way. I cannot feel my heart. Like, I can't feel it. I can feel my chest. I can feel the constriction. I do not feel my heart. Where is my heart? Like, do I feel my heart? I can feel it pump sometimes a little bit, but it's the sweat and the glands, but I don't feel my heart. And I was confused. How do I feel this thing I can't feel? Because everybody tells me, because it's been some gurus over the years have said that's who you are. And I'm sitting in that chair and I realized how I feel. And I'm feeling it right now. I feel it in my arm, the top of my arms and the top of my legs, but the majority is the top of my arms. That's where I feel. Right now, it's going wild. I mean, it's going wild because when I'm speaking the truth or when I see something or understand something, it goes wild. That's my sign. I have a friend in Luxembourg who sees light around a person, around his head since he's a child. He'd wipe his eyes. I can't see a light. But you can't tell him he needs to see his heart. He sees it in his light. Well, I see it here, and I realized I had been on this journey listening to all these gurus and these books and these examples to find what I already knew was that I feel with my arms and the tops of my legs. And when I realized that, he asked me tons of questions. We spent 5 hours together. How does this feel? What do you mean? Where's the connection? And we explored all of it. And I went home that night. And for over 3 months, I had been talking to a person almost every other day in Europe. And I turned on, it was Skype at the time. I turned on Skype and he looks at me and he says, who are you? And I said, what do you mean? He says, you're not the guy I spoke to yesterday. who are you? And he saw it in the light. And it happened that night. So I know the night, but it took a lot of pain to get to that point. And I also know that's the last time I will transition. V5 is the one. It was the one I've been searching for my whole life, to find who that was. Who was this? And so if here's the journey and here's the end, I'm right about here in this new journey that I know will go to here. And it's devastating. I mean, the world crumbles around me in ways you never can imagine. But that's the journey in the fall. And so I guess the story behind it that I would share is, and not that I need to, but maybe you heard it, is that I've got my own drum. I am me. I hear what other people do. I read the books. I listen to the quotes. But when someone quotes everybody, tell me about you. I don't need to hear all the quotes of all the famous people that you've read about. They didn't find the answers either. They would still be searching today if they were alive 500 years later. Hannah, you have your answers. They're in you. Same with you, Kaleb. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking about, I had this conversation with myself plenty of times as well, in terms of what's my ontological reason for being here. And now I've been thinking about the versions of myself that you're talking about as well. And thinking like I felt that transition as well. And I think I'm on version 2 at the moment. And thinking how long does it actually take me to get to the next version, or what were the moments where that happened. And so many of the things that you said have resonated with personal experiences and things as in exponential growth and then a big drop down. And also, connecting that to the box that you were mentioning. For me, it's not a box, it's about worlds. It's about the world that we construct within every day. And the thing that is, and when you say think outside the box, for me, it's more about connecting a dot. It's about, I have plenty of experiences and I'm living in this box, in this world. But when you ask me think outside the box, I just go outside and just pick a dot and then bring it back in, and then use that to expand the moment. So I don't know. I'm just thinking about how can other people realize this, and how can we actually help so many others to calm or ease their anxiety over many of these questions that they have every day. I feel peace. I wake up every day and I don't feel anxiety. I feel gratitude. I feel a lot of acceptance, and that takes time and that takes a lot of courage. But within my young age, I just learned that I'm fearless. Like I don't fear anything because I know that my mom loves me. And that's for me, like fucking hell. Like I have people who I can relate to. I have people who I can trust, and overall I know myself. So I think this box that we've been talking about and this ontological question of why we're here, it's you're right. The answer is in ourselves. So as long as you can tell yourself like, yeah, it's better to have a question, a nice question, something to keep you going and flowing instead of getting stuck somewhere, then you're gonna be joyful, not happy, but joyful, because being happy is bullshit. So that's some of the things that I've been picking up and that I've been constructing. Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice conversation.
You brought up the questions, which I think is a great point. When I received this invite from Ilya, I don't know if he basically asked me to solve the price of the lack of innovations, and so there's 2 parts. Help us to see the wonder of our existence clearly. Oh my God. I said that I didn't even want to ask him what he meant, because going there would have been a challenge. I mean, those are in and of themselves. These are ambitions, challenges. So you brought up the word question. What I did, and I actually transmuted this, and I don't know why, because it was questions for me. I wrote 100 questions or something. I don't know. I've deleted a lot and come back and forth to ask you, because I don't have any of these answers. So I wrote things like, are you here? Do you see, I deleted some of these things. Are you here? I kind of did this. I deleted some and I don't. Do you wonder? Why do you wonder? How do you see your existence? Do you see it having meaning? Are these expressions only human? Maybe a better question would be, are you present? Is there a better question to ask? Why would this new question or series of hieroglyphic symbols what would they read or sound like? Did you use your mother tongue? Why did you think you have a better question? Is there a best question, or might there just be others? Is the exploration of your existence or questions just a meaning to find you? Would the answer really have meaning? Or is this just a manifestation of your culture, your race, your religion, your belief, your gender, political orientation, that you've adapted partially, unknowingly? Do I exist? Why are you even answering these questions? Why do you feel this way? Do you know me? Would this help you to find the meaning or any meaning in your journey? Do you believe that others have the clues you need to discover a meaning or to uncover your own meaning? Are you not a whole person as you are today? What if you discovered you really had no meaning, that life has no meaning? What would your next step be? Could you accept the possibility that we look for meaning not because one exists, but because we know there is no absolute meaning? Do you already know your definition of meaning? In your entire existence, have you not experienced your meaning? Has this not morphed with time, evolved with experiences? Isn't it ironic that in the search for the meaning, we inherently know that you will not find the meaning, because if one does not find the meaning, if one does find the meaning, the search is over. In your heart of hearts, would you like to search to be over? Or are you fundamentally, to the core of your existence, a person who loves the struggle? Do you confuse meaning with purpose? Are you looking for a purpose more than a meaning? Did you just ask yourself if meaning and purpose are the same? Are you the type of individual who loves searching for history, for those who've asked the big questions, led a life of experiences and insights, and looked for the great thinkers? Has any one of them found this ubiquitous meaning? If they have, why are you still looking? Are you right now searching because you cannot accept their answer as the definition of your existence? Does a life of the pursuit make you a better person? If you were to be honest, could you say that the people around you have not answered this question either? Then why put yourself through this exercise? Might it be so that you can create bonds with others in the pursuit of the unanswerable question? Might it be so that you can make sense of your own worth? It is a means of creating the identity that others can value, while inside of you, you know they will never know you or your meaning. Do you attempt to answer this question to show both a separation and inclusiveness, as if you're a bold thinker, to add shock value to who you are, so you could show you're an artist, a progressive, not unlike the artist who wears clothing that demonstrates that they're an artist, while observational truth is they are just a conformist? I love when people wear a beret to say that they're an artist, and yet all they're doing is being a conformist. Does your search involve meditation or other spiritual means of pursuing the unsolvable, unanswerable question? Does this thought make you uncomfortable? Will you love me for asking or hate me for challenging you? I mean, there's another 50. I'll stop there. But I started asking myself for this. What questions would I ask you or me? Because these are questions for me too. What would I ask? And I don't know where any of this goes. What do you think?
Can you kindly finish this and publish?
I never even thought about it.
Let's do that. Let's put it on our Notion. This would be lovely.
Did you like them?
Yeah. I felt as though it's all questions to me personally. So yeah.
Okay, you did. You felt as if I was asking them of you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Moreover, I was completely blown away with just reading what I asked you to do. Like when I just read the description of the talk, I was like, whoa, this was written 3 months ago, and I forgot about it. So you just blew me away with actually doing it.
I've got maps and drawings, but don't forget, there's another one on the price of the lack of innovation. And I said, what does it mean? The price of the lack of a price on the lack of innovation. And what does that mean? I said, so let's break it apart. What does price mean? Price is a human construct to define value. Can you put a price on something? Because now we have to define innovation and price, but is there actually a meaning? And then I said, well, then I went on to what the other one is, the lack of innovation. And I said, what's the lack of innovation? Innovators are individuals, so we don't have to call them innovators because we all innovate. We innovate our day and our lives, is to use the right amount of energy in the universe to deliver the right amount of solution that we need, not too much, not too little. But if you wasted energy, the universe actually wastes a lot of energy. Trees are not efficient. Animals are not efficient. We are wasted. We are not efficient. Humans try to be efficient, but life is not efficient. And yet, is this only a variable of the price of lack of innovation? Isn't this defined by the individual? The individual can say if it's valuable or not. Or isn't sometimes doing nothing a choice? That is the innovation in and of itself, because no outcome is for sure. And why might one consider there to be a loss? Because humans are searching for answers to solve self-created constructs and realities defined by a desire to create a different existence instead of the existence they're in today. And so I explored this whole thing, and I never came up with an answer either. So getting back to you, Hannah, what I did is I went inside my box and I said, if you've known me, you've probably never heard me do what I'm doing today. And I took other people's experiences, and I actually took, you probably know the name Scooter Braun. Do you know the name Scooter Braun? Where do you know it? You've heard it in reference to, go ahead, Hannah, do you know? It's Justin Bieber's manager. I can't hear you, Justin Bieber.
Oh, you didn't have to unmute me. No, you didn't have to unmute me. I'm still in early morning voice.
Justin Bieber's manager is my cousin's child, Scott Braun. My cousin had a child, Scott, and Scott is Scooter Braun. And so and Hannah, by the way, I saw your face and your expression, and I reacted to it without knowing it. I reacted to your question of expression. And so my aunt just died. I had 2 aunts. My aunt died last week, and no funeral where everybody was together. And she was my favorite aunt, if you want to use those terms. I would see her whenever I could. Amazing person. And she died normally. She was sitting with her daughter, and she just died right on the spot, wasn't sick. And we had 100 people get together on Zoom. 100 cousins and relatives got together on Zoom. And Scott shared, he said, I don't know if you all know, but I found her last will and testament. And it was funny because we all took it seriously for a moment. And then he says, Larry, you were given 1968 to 1969 such and such. And Lynn, his daughter, you were given her clothing from 1974 to 1976. You got the good stuff because your sister, and it was all a joke. And then he said, and David, is David here? Well, David got $1. I don't know why he got $1, but David got $1. And so I took that experience, that trigger, it's in me, and I said, how do I address this? And I said, well, I'm not going to do that, but why don't I just create a series of questions? And that brought me to a new place, which I bet if Ilya had said, this is what David's going to do, he would never have thought of this. True?
Thank you. Oh, I had no idea this was going to happen, but I changed quite a bit in the last 2 months, and I really embrace what is happening. And I saw glimpses of that when I was in a better state of mind, but I never lived through it for so long. So I'm enjoying all of it. Thank you so much for being here. Gina, we're about to finish this session. Do you want to add or ask anything? I appreciate you being on stage.
I'm just curious, David. I think our talk were the ideas of making the world a better place. I think last time we had an interaction, we were looking at that, and that's what brought us together in terms of a potential follow-on conversation, which I will follow on with you maybe after this. But I'm really curious and also excited to hear a couple things. I research people with interesting abilities, and the person that talked to you and even you yourself are very interesting for me just as research subjects. But in relation to that, you mentioned these version 5 and this story of seeing this person, him making you realize it's not the heart, but you react differently. The hairs on your legs and your arms. I have venture people. There's an investor that I was talking to, and it's like, hey, how do you make a decision? Is it the team? Is it the project and everything? And he told me, I know when I have a good investment in front of me, when the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And so something about him related to his body as a filter kind of tell him. And when he feels that, he knows that, wow, this is something I have to put money in. And it's not really an objective, tangible kind of thing, but it comes from the years of experience, the years of his exploring and going out of the box and being part of a newer box and everything like this. And so for me, the curious thing for you is you have a vision, this thing happened to you, which became David Goldsmith version 5. And then you see this thing and you see the thing that's going to happen to get you to version 6. And the whole thing is it's a phase shift almost, like ice becoming or water turning into ice or something. I'm really curious as the first 4 things as well too. And what is it? If you think of like a snake or like a scorpion or something where you molt and then you discard a shell and then you come into a new shell. Just very, very curious as to that process for you through your journey of transformation.
I don't know. I could share with you, and I'd have to explore that. I don't think
because the thing I'd like to bring up with that is just in terms of back to the theme when I started is the whole out of a box. It seems like you've created this is version 5 of the box. You're in version 5 of the box right now.
Well, I don't
transformation.
I don't use the box. Version 5. Each version has a different behavioral side of me. It has a different biological approach to who I am. It is a different sense of awareness, not a good or a bad, just a different. Would I want to be for again? Never. There were things that I was missing. There were challenges that I'd have. I share this experience when as much as I can do this and I can have fun when I know people. There's a friend you probably would know or heard of him in Hong Kong, and I was not a very two types of people go into a bar. First type of person goes in and says they don't even know anybody. A club, like this is my place. You see them. If you watch people walk in, they're looking. They know. Then there's the other person who walks in. That person's looking for people they know so that they can connect. I'm that person. If I don't see anybody, I can't stay. I'm not going to find people. I don't attract those people, but there are people like that. And we were at Dragon Eye one day, and I have no challenge having conversations with individuals, but he was bringing over one beautiful woman after another. And at one point he walks up to me, he says, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "What?" He says, "You're not talking to them." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "I'm bringing all these people over to talk to you and you're not saying anything." I said, "Well, I don't know what to say." And he says, "You?" He didn't know who I was. Now, getting back to improving how we live on Earth for all species, and I'll leave it with this because this would take forever. I grew up in a small town in right above New York City, but it was far enough away that it was not New York City. It was in the Catskill Mountains, cows and moose and all of those things, but enough of a community. And then I went up to university, up to where I am right now in this region of New York State. And my first business I started was in this region. And then I started, we added some more businesses, and pretty soon it was the state of New York. So it was the size of a country in Europe, bigger than Slovakia, bigger than Macedonia. And we took that, and I went to multiple states, and pretty soon my world became that. And then pretty soon it was the United States. I was doing work on California and the United States. And in between I had some crashes, but I went there, and then I started to do international work. So I would fly out and come back, and I'd have those experiences. And then one day I made this journey, a long, long story, and I got to Hong Kong. And then I was more international, and then I became global. I've not just spoken. I think when individuals say, "I've worked in these countries," but all they've done is fly in, stayed at the peninsula, gone up to the top of the peak, and then come down. They didn't work in the country. They just visited for a day. That's not working. I've worked in these countries that I've mentioned earlier, and so my world became the globe. And then I got involved in this project, which it's a calling for me. It's not something that I wake up, I can't stop doing it. So it's an addiction in some way. And now I've got the moon involved. And so my world has gone bump, 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 bump. And now my universe is mirth, moon and earth, mirth. We live in this construct of mirth, and there's infinite possibilities and infinite resources. It's the new age we're going to have. We're not having a fourth industrial revolution. Think about it. A fourth industrial revolution is IoT, 5G. It's just data, but just faster. That's all it is. But we're in this new age that will come upon us called the age of infinite possibilities and infinite resources, and it will include mirth. So my world has expanded with who I am. And I feel that it's the right way. I don't know why, and I don't know why I get up and do it. I just know that the experiences I'm having, the people I'm meeting, the lessons I'm learning keep on helping me to expand. So going back to that box becoming bigger is now my world includes a floating object in space. And I'm not a space person. I don't look up to the stars. I don't dream about traveling the universe. I mean, I'd like to be on a Star Trek Enterprise. That would be kind of fun. If you said you can go to the moon and come back, I'm game for that. But if you tell me that I have to live in space, I'm an earther. I really like beaches and fun and going outside, and I like grass, and I like that. So I'm an earther. Yet this project has expanded who I am, and it involves this thing called mirth. And so to answer your question, Gino, or to share with you that I don't believe there will be ever a V6. I believe the V5 is what I had been searching for my whole life. And it was the disconnect that didn't happen. It was that unknowingness of who this was. It was the arms. It was the missing link in connection with people that I would not have had. I could not have had this conversation at V3. I could not. This was not who I was. And today, I am a little uncomfortable, Hannah. This topic is an uncomfortable one for me. It is. There's a lot about what we've shared today that I'm, and I've had them with other people. It's not that it's new, but I'm exploring new senses of how to meet people in a different place.
Thank you for that.